Danelle, the next question here. There are some proposals about AMMs and liquidity pools on Stellar Core. Do you believe that this is something we're going to see on Stellar Core this year?
So what I love about this is that I'm on the developer thread, so I get the developer updates and like what ideas people bring to us. And they're not bringing them to us, they're bringing them to the community and the ecosystem. And that's where these came from. So absolutely, we are focused on this. Like I said, liquidity is a really important issue for us, and we're focused on that in Q2 and Q3 and probably Q4. So whether we'll see specifically liquidity pools and AMMs, I don't know the answer yet. But you can see if you're part of our developer network and you look and you go on that thread that there's a lot of momentum there and there's a lot of discussion there. And we respond to what's happening in the ecosystem. So we do our part to support. This wasn't our proposal, it wasn't our idea, but we can help to move it along. So this is one of the things we're focused on. Well, both of them, liquidity pools and AMMs, is one of the things we're focused on looking at. So I'm excited about the opportunity, particularly because it came from someone else who, it's always really nice to not get so like caught up in what we know and to have other folks out there bring these ideas. So I think that it's one of the things that we'll continue to look at, among other things.
Yeah, to me, it seems like like if arbitrage goes up a lot, yeah, it'll certainly be a nuisance, but it doesn't seem like there's a way for it to really be catastrophic. There's lots of guardrails and checks in the network already that would prevent it from doing that. But yeah, like things like catching up to the network or running Horizon could potentially be like more load than we would want. So I think we should deal with arbitrage. I'm not convinced it'll like I said, the millions. I'm not convinced like going to 38 will greatly increase arbitrage unless it just greatly increases the number of people using the network, right? Which is we want, right? So.
I mean, just kind of for the record, I know this isn't on the table. So my preference in all this, I think the real priority is to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good in this project. And so what I would, my ideal solution for an AMM would be, as fast to implement and deploy as possible, and as easy to kind of upgrade or back out, when we decide we want to do something better. And so.
Hey, everybody out there, hope you guys are doing well. We've got Justin Rice, Stellar Development Foundation. How are you doing, sir?
Great. Excited to be here. Great day. Beautiful, sunny day. And just thanks for having me, Sam.
No, this is great. We are going to be talking about something that you guys had put out just recently. Let's go check it out right here. So, introducing automated market makers on Stellar. This is huge. Now, normally you guys don't put out announcements like this of protocol upgrades and progress. Let's start off with that. What kind of motivated this to happen?
The announcement itself, which basically, let me step back. The way that protocol changes happen is there's a very specific process that they go through before they're implemented in a version of Stellar Core that's put up to the network for validator vote. So the protocol change doesn't actually go live on the network until validators accept the new protocol version, basically ratify the change and say, cool, great change, we're accepting it. Where we are right now is earlier on in that process, basically a technical proposal to add a new feature to Stellar was officially accepted. So that means that the committee that basically accepts these proposals, they all three said, thumbs up, let's implement this proposal. And now the Stellar Core team will start implementing it to eventually, again, put it forth for the network to vote on. The reason why we're talking about it now is because there was a lot of discussion about automated market makers leading up to this proposal. A lot of it originated from basically two different places. The ecosystem and the community have always known that there's a great potential that exists on other blockchains for automated market makers to bring liquidity to the network, to make it easier to exchange assets. Meanwhile, like our sort of protocol development team started thinking about possible ways to implement it, and there was sort of this desire and this need and the practical ability to bring it to Stellar. And so they converged to create this proposal. But since there was so much discussion, and since it's such a big proposal, and since there's so much left to do, to sort of, once AMMs are implemented in core, there still has to be a lot that the ecosystem needs to do to basically make it so that people can interact with them. We decided to start talking about it earlier. So big change, exciting change, and something that if we start talking about now, people can get into their heads and think, okay, what can we as an ecosystem and as a community do to prepare for this new source of liquidity and this new way to participate in network liquidity on the network. And so that's why we're talking about it early. I mean, it's a big, big fundamental change, and it's just, you don't want to sit on it too long. You want to start telling people.
That's right. I know, going back to the roadmap set forth 2021, improving liquidity is an essential part of the 2021 growth plan. And this clearly fits right into that. The Stellar DEX is just so powerful. There's so many different assets and currencies that, that live on there. And one of the biggest hurdles that I know that we've seen is utilizing DEX has been slow and in many times inefficient. If you can maybe talk a little bit about the way that the DEX currently works and what an AMM will provide to make it better. So I guess we start with the DEX. I know that it's an order book platform, correct?
Correct, yeah. So DEX stands for Decentralized Exchange. So when we talk about the DEX, we're talking about, or the SDEX, we're talking about the Stellar Decentralized Exchange. And basically, since its inception, Stellar has had built into it at the protocol level the ability to make to basically make an order to buy an asset or to sell an asset. So you can, with your account, you can say, I want to sell USD for euros. And the protocol itself aggregates all of the orders into order books that are sort of prioritized, and they prioritize and sorts them by price and prioritizes execution by price. So an order book, if you can imagine it, it's sort of sell offers on one side and buy offers on the other. And when they cross, right, when someone is basically willing to sell at the same price someone's willing to buy at, it executes a trade. The order book model is tried and true. It's sort of what underlies most traditional exchanges. If you've ever traded, Forex or cryptocurrency on a typical exchange, you're using an order book model. And the order book model is great. I mean, it's fairly intuitive because basically it's aggregating offers to buy and sell and executing them when they cross. And it's on Stellar, you can create that order book between any two assets. So anyone can sort of make orders to buy or sell any given Stellar asset for another. The challenge with the order book is liquidity. Essentially, if you are trying to execute on the order book, to actually make trades, or on Stellar to make path payments, which are payments that route through the order book so that I send USD, you receive euros.
Right.
The challenge is that the order book has to have those orders standing there, right? That your order can consume to make a trade. And liquid order books, when order books are liquid, they are very, very good at sort of creating an environment where you can make those trades really easily at good and predictable rates. But with Stellar, we're not talking about a few order books. We're talking about order books for every single asset that gets issued on the network. And the network is really supposed to sort of absorb and like the whole world of international payments. So if you imagine essentially creating on-chain, on the network itself, order books between just tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of asset pairs, you start to realize there have to be a lot of orders to buy and sell a lot of different assets for each other. There has to be a lot of liquidity. And creating that liquidity is a real challenge. It's a challenge no matter what. With order books specifically, in order to create a lot of liquidity, you have to have inventory. Basically, you have to have assets that you can buy or sell. And you have to, since those assets sort of represent assets in the real world, you a lot of the times have to basically update your orders on the order book based on what's happening outside of the network. So if basically the relationship on a Forex exchanges for USD to euros changes, you need to change your orders on the order book to reflect that outside reality. And so in addition to capital, you have to really be attentive. You have to have some expertise. Generally, you have to run trading bots that are constantly updating your orders. And all of that is possible, but not for most consumers. Basically, that province, that domain of order book market making is done by professional market makers who have the capital and know how to run those bots and are willing to like sit there and sort of update the order books constantly to create liquidity. And finally, for market makers, what they're doing is they're essentially putting orders on both sides of the books to buy and sell, and they make their profit off of the spread between the two. So there's like an incremental price between the incremental amount, that is the spread, like between buy and sell offers, and they essentially make money off of high volumes of transactions because they make that tiny bit of spread. And so market makers, in addition to, again, the sort of the complexity and the capital requirements, they also are drawn to very high volume markets because that's where there's more profit potential. All of that's great, but it means that they are not suited to make markets on every single asset pair that Stellar, for Stellar to reach its potential, that needs to be made. And so in other DeFi protocols and other networks, there was a new idea for a liquidity source called automated market makers. And so what happens with, this is a really long answer, but what happens with this protocol change is that the order books still exist as is, but it introduces a new form of exchange to create liquidity. And those automated market makers essentially allow individual users to pool liquidity, and it, based on an algorithm, automatically settles trades. And automated market makers on other networks have managed to attract a lot of capital and provide a lot of liquidity to execute trades. So the idea is, if we introduce them to Stellar, they could, the DEX could continue to function as is. Market makers can continue to make the markets they make there, but automated market makers will exist in parallel and allow individual users to pool liquidity, especially for asset pairs that are overlooked by market makers.
That's awesome, because I think that one thing that we've talked about many times on many of the shows is the fact that the advantage that Stellar has over a lot of these other networks are the real world assets. I mean, we're talking about currency, stable coins. You have the bank in Germany that has you have a bank-backed stable coin, which is the first of its kind. So there's some really exciting opportunities. This is, anyone can look at the actual Cap 38 proposal. It's really great, and you can see just so many great people that oftentimes you don't hear about. Nikhil, you have Orbit Lens, who's great community members that have been contributing, along with a lot of other folks. During the intro, my audio wasn't working, but I wanted to point out this last proposal that occurred, open protocol discussion, and you had Jed McCaleb and David, is it Mazaris? Is that the
Mazaris,
proper pronunciation? Yeah. Mazaris on the live with everybody. I mean, I'm sure everybody watching is taking a big sigh of excitement to see these faces all together on one same page. I'm just curious, a little background on what's been going on, and it seems that everyone's really excited about the potential that AMMs could bring to Stellar.
Yeah, everyone is really excited about the potential for AMMs. Like, as you pointed out in the 2021 roadmap for SDF, one of the big challenges that we wanted to tackle was liquidity. There has to be liquidity on the network. You have to be able to exchange assets. And AMMs really bring a new potential source of liquidity that could magnify the ability for the network to have a real-world impact. And that's because it will create the ability to exchange all new kinds of assets that are difficult to exchange now. AMMs have the potential to make them really easy to exchange at good rates. They also give individuals who don't necessarily have the capital or the expertise or the ability to be professional market makers, right? They take market making and liquidity provision and put it in the hands of everyone, because they're really easy. It's really easy to contribute to liquidity pools that are sort of the fundamental that underlie the automated market makers. And so all of that is to say, democratizing market making, providing liquidity, and sort of jump-starting some of the asset pairs that could really use better markets. That's super exciting for everyone. I also think that it's a very technically interesting idea, right? So the idea that for protocol designers, for Jed and David and many other protocol designers, I think and I'm sort of speaking for them in a way, and I could be wrong, but let me just imagine you're a protocol designer, and you can
wait. Hold on.
Right.
Let me get into my zen. I am a protocol designer.
Yeah. So you're
okay.
a protocol designer.
I'm there.
And you can sort of, out of just by the ability to sort of conceptualize ideas and turn them into code, okay, you can craft something that actually has a massive impact on the real world. So it just sort of is coming from your brain and your ability to reason and your ability to write code. You can put something together that actually fundamentally alters the way that people exchange assets. It empowers them to do something that they couldn't do before. And I think it's both the impact and the technical challenge and the fact that they sort of combine together that makes this a really exciting development at the protocol level, right? It's like, today I wrote code that changed the world. I think this.
And that's absolutely what you guys are doing. I want to kind of shift a little bit here. I think that this is a good topic and a good example, because one of the things that often, many times, I'll say over the last couple of years, is that people have the misconception of the Stellar Development Foundation as kind of like the all-seeing eye, controlling everything that gets done on the network, and they don't maybe realize just how decentralized and how much of a development community we actually have. Now, this proposal, I remember a couple years ago, the topic of DeFi and some of these other projects that came up, and even you yourself was kind of wondering, you weren't quite sure if it was going to be a fade or not. But I was hoping maybe you could spend a couple minutes to really talk about how this came from the community, and it was something that you guys kind of shifted and said, hey, this is what you guys want, we're going to help make it happen. But you guys didn't initiate that. I think that's a great story, just to let people realize the sheer community that we truly have.
Yeah, that's correct. The idea for AMMs really came from the community and from the ecosystem. I think a lot of people who are active in the Stellar community, they also look around at what's happening on other protocols. And there was a lot of excitement about, DeFi protocols and about AMMs. And a lot of people were pointing to them and saying, look at the impact that this is happening. Look at how well Uniswap is doing, right? Why don't we have Uniswap for Stellar? And for a while, I believe I even said, maybe this DeFi stuff is a fad, right? But after just sort of like listening to people in the community over and over again saying, it's not a fad, it's here to stay, it's having an impact, we should do this. Eventually, they're right? So we listen, we say, these people, they know what they're talking about, they're right, we should really try to figure out what we can do to sort of help implement an idea that captures all of this feedback that we're getting. But I'll say even before that, right, the actual initial proposal to add AMMs to Stellar Core came from a community member. It came from Orbit Lens, who does not work for SDF. And he not only listened to all that feedback, he wrote a blog post that said, we should have AMMs on Stellar now. And then he said, and here's how I think we should do it. So he wrote a proposal, Cap 37. And Cap 37 sort of motivated basically a more stripped down version, which is ultimately what we're implementing now, which is Cap 38. And so the initial liquidity proposal for AMMs came from the community also. And the process of working through both of those iterations, right, like the sort of more complicated and the simpler iteration, Cap 37 and Cap 38, all that's done in public on a mailing list, the Stellar Dev mailing list. And if you go look at the conversation on that list about those things, so much of the feedback, so many of the ideas that are incorporated now literally came from suggestions that are coming from all over the place, right? So, various people spanning the globe who work on different projects would sort of look at the proposal and say, I see a place here where it could be optimized. I see a potential pitfall here. And all that feedback gets collated. And so what you end up with is ultimately something that was initiated based on community suggestion, and initially drafted by a community member, And then, sort of the SDF, members of the SDF worked on it, but we're constantly getting this meaningful feedback from the community too. And so you end up with something that is really born out of not only the community and the ecosystem, but also out of just like sort of the open source nature of the Stellar code base. So it's really cool. It's amazing to me every time something like that works, right? When you have people with different ideas and different backgrounds and different like sort of perceptions, points of view, and it can all come together into a proposal that a network, ideally can accept, right? I mean, we'll see. The vote hasn't happened yet, but it's amazing when it all works out together, because there is no I don't know. It's just like sort of the will of the participants coalesces into a meaningful change.
Right, absolutely. Shout out to I know we have a lot of Stellar Global members that are watching. I love to just go around, our different channels. Stellar Africa has been very active lately. Stellar Turkey. Even in our speculation room, there's a lot of folks that are talking and bringing up some really exciting ideas of how the community can improve and suggestions for the network. Even our dev room. I don't know. I know you've popped in our dev room a couple of times, but it's been really great just to see all these different ideas. And that's just one one Discord. I mean, there's Reddit channels. There's a lot of communities that are just building up all over the globe, and it is exciting to see the Stellar network really evolve and accept all these ideas. I don't know how we do it, man, but we're moving along as a family for real.
Right. It's pretty amazing. It's a group of people. It is a community. So just when communities work and they manage to have like a positive space and it moves forward and everyone's collaborating, and obviously nothing's perfect, but yeah, it does feel like a family. It feels like a functional family.
Right.
And Stellar Global is amazing. I go in there all the time. I check out a lot of the rooms. I mean, I mostly do look in the dev room, in part because for me, I want to know what people are thinking. I want to help when I can, right? So if someone has a question I can answer, I want to be able to contribute and be helpful. But also, I mostly want to see what people care about, what they're thinking, what their ideas are, because that's the amazing thing. All the great ideas that are going to move Stellar forward, and really the world forward, right? They come from sort of the melding of a lot of different minds, right? They come from. It's more than just crowdsourcing. It's community building, and so like I love to just spend time in there. Oftentimes just lurking to be like, what do people care about? What are they talking about? What are their ideas? And it's just like a really vibrant place.
Absolutely. Your own big family. That's right. Shout out to everybody out there, all the different communities. As we, let's we start looking forward. Stellar, we're getting into the third and fourth quarter of the year. What can you share with the community right now as far as some of the excitements beyond AMMs? Is there anything that you're able to share at this point of maybe plans or ambitions for the rest of the year?
Well, I mean, the AMM thing is definitely the biggest development, right? So, and just to give a timeline on that, currently the proposal is in implementation stage. And so while that's happening, there's a lot of thinking about all the downstream services and applications that need to support AMM. So Horizon support, SDK support, and ultimately we need people in the ecosystem to build interfaces that allow people to create and interact with these liquidity pools. Mm-hmm. And all of that, I think, will be happening. There'll be a real focus on trying to get that to happen, both in terms of like encouraging the community and the ecosystem to do stuff, and also just things on our end, like Horizon improvements. And that will take up a lot of the quarter on like the engineering and sort of ecosystem outreach side, because I think that this version of Stellar Core will basically be released in late September, and the network vote will be in October, sometime in October, maybe early November. So that's consuming a lot of the like mental space.
You got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, there's definitely some exciting announcements that will be that'll be coming out soon. But in general, with like announcements, there's some sort of partnerships that are in the works. But in general, with those things, I can't jump the gun, because most of the time when we're basically working with a specific organization, we time the release announcement so that everyone is talking about it at the same time, and there's like agreements in place and all that kind of stuff. There are exciting announcements that will happen in this next quarter in addition to AMMs, but I think you just have to stay tuned for those.
Whoa. All right. We're gonna end off on that one. Thank you, Justin, for coming out to the show today. We're really excited about AMMs. Extremely excited about everything you guys are doing right now. How can we stay up to date on all these changes and how things are progressing, as well as if there's somebody listening that wants to join in on discussion, maybe wants to participate in some of the code, how can they get involved?
Yeah,
absolutely. Crypto Chimp, spill the beans for us, Justin. Yeah, go ahead. How can people get involved?
I think, obviously Stellar Global is a great place to talk with to sort of join the community. If you want to actually see protocol development happen and join the protocol development discussion, there's a Stellar Dev Google group. So if you just look on stellar.org, and I think look under the developers tab, there'll be a link to the Stellar Dev Google group. And it's literally where anytime there's a proposed change to the protocol, and the whole discussion starts, and most of it happens there. And all ideas and contributions are welcome. So you can just watch it and see what's happening, or you can literally chime in, and it's pretty fun. Sometimes things get rowdy there, just like in any community. A lot of the times it's very technical, but no matter what, even when it's like not rowdy and super technical, it's also always very interesting.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie, man. I like watching the protocol chats when people get testy.
Right?
Honestly, I like it. I'm like, boy, David ain't no pushover. I like, man,
right?
You better hear David speak now. You better stop speaking up on him like that. Shout out to David. No, I love it. I love watching it.
It's great. Well, man. There has to be passion, right? There has to be passion at the center of all this work, or else it just isn't done right. And so it's anytime there's passionate people that come together, there is always disagreement. It can get testy, but respectful disagreement is at the heart of all progress, right?
Absolutely. Thank you again. Yes, I agree, Felix. You have to rewatch this. More USD liquidity on the DEX. I mean, that's just a good example. I mean, when we're able to take something like USDC that's on the DEX and create liquidity pools, I mean, it just opens up a whirlwind of activities. Real quick, I got one final question, because AMMs, I mean, that's one specific thing, but as far as like, I guess overall smart contract capabilities, that's still something separate, correct?
Yeah, well, first of all, AMMs generally rely on some sort of smart contract, and so
right.
But when you talk about general smart contracting capabilities, you're usually talking about more than AMMs, right? You're talking about the ability to create contracts that execute automatically and then settle on Stellar. And I want to say, this is also a great example of sort of the ecosystem and community at work. At SDF, a lot of our focus has been on this proposal to bring AMMs to the protocol. But there are all kinds of organizations in the ecosystem that are working and thinking about how to basically plug smart contracts into Stellar. And I think actually there's the Satoshi Pay project that you mentioned, and it's a great example of for those of you who don't know. I mean, I guess you've been active, like sort of helping to talk about that project a bit. Maybe you can tell us a bit about it. But I'll just say it's an example of how the outside of SDF, there are a lot of people in the ecosystem who see the potential of Stellar and say, I think we can extend the network's capabilities by doing X or Y. And so they start building things that sort of have utility. Sam, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what I can share, but I mean, in general, I mean, it's an exciting project, and like you said, a good example of Satoshi Pay, which is an independent organization and contributor in the community, looking at ways to create a bridge that can actually access Ethereum and potentially more. So you're absolutely right. It's exciting. It's exciting to see the use cases and capabilities of Stellar continue to grow. And the ability to now really react and communicate with some real world assets, which I think is going to open up a world of possibilities. Absolutely.
I think it's going to be a really I think by the end of this year, there's just going to be, I think people are going to have the ability to do a lot more with Stellar. I think there's a lot of amazing innovation happening right now. Pendulum. I guess we didn't say the name Pendulum. Yeah, that's the name of the Satoshi project, Pendulum. And it's one of, there are a few others, right? I mean, there are things that other people are working on that will have the potential to do sort of the similar thing, to extend the network's capabilities, to allow for smart contracts, or to increase throughput, to enable AMMs. And so, as this protocol change is very, very exciting. It is one of many sort of innovations that are currently happening that I think will really make Stellar pop this year.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you everybody for joining in. Definitely reshare, retweet this video. It's exciting. Don't forget, you got stellar-global.org. You can join into the dev group there, the dev channel, and stay up to date. As you said, as Justin just pointed out, he's in there listening, so make sure to join the network and contribute. Also, there is, if you go to stellar.org, you can also access a link there that will take you to the Google community chat, Google Dev community chat. Just follow the dev links from there and get involved. I think that hopefully, if there's one thing that you walk away with, is that Stellar is an open, decentralized network where we are all, not just me, not just Justin, but we are all. There are so many people from all over the globe in their own communities, beyond Stellar Global, beyond the SDF, that are doing so many great things. And we want everybody to participate because we love all of you guys. And we're on a really exciting journey into a world of literal opportunity. And you know what? This is your time. This is the time that you're alive. Participate, join in. Don't miss this moment. Justin, thank you again for joining us. To everybody else, stay tuned. We're going to have some more shows, announcements coming up right around the corner. Hang on for a second, Justin. Everybody, take care. Ciao.